I've got a bit of a confession to make. You know, I preach about keeping your computers clean and whatnot, trying to avoid the need for a deep cleaning, which you've seen probably many videos of already on this channel. But there is one PC that I have utterly neglected, and I'm a bit ashamed. So I'm gonna go ahead and apologize ahead of time for not practicing what I preach in this particular case. And we're gonna see how bad it is, because it's been over a year, I believe, since I've touched this thing, and it's laying on the floor. But hear me out. So this is my racing sim. You've probably seen a few videos on this already, including the steering wheel itself, the whole assembly. We've even got the Odyssey Neo G9 monitor from Samsung here. This ultra wide, ultra curved panel works really well with this setup. But you're wondering maybe where the computer is. Well, it's under there. It's that box, which my camera's not focusing on, but yeah, it's under there, and that's why I'm concerned about dust buildup, because it's been there for like a year. Now you can probably see I've got this propped up at an angle, and I did this so that the, I think it's the graphics card on the far side, could pull in air unhindered from the carpet below. Now, there are probably better ways to do this. I just kind of threw it down there and was, more worried about airflow than anything else. Dust collection, the fact that this is on the floor, means that it's probably quite dirty. In fact, just the surface dust is pretty rough on this. So let's go ahead and take this into the office and see just how bad it really is. You might want to brace for impact. You ready? Stay with me. To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key. Purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. Well, here she is, and I've got to say, I thought it would be a bit worse on the surface. Yeah, it's dusty, but I think the real culprit here is going to be in the CPU cooler. As you can see, this is the top part of the case. So when it was sitting in the racing sim, or underneath it I should say, it was angled like this. So it was actually pressed up pretty close to the pedal board. And I imagine underneath is where, we'll see, well no, it looks pretty clean under here. It's really weird how the dust accumulated. These rubber feet are falling off. I'll just re-stick these at some point. Anyway, 4 screws here. Let's go ahead and get the cover off. And I've got to say, I am very surprised that the underside of this case looks as clean as it does. We actually still have dust filters here on the bottom. I had to remove the dust filter over the CPU cooler because of clearance issues, which I'll show you in a second. So let's flip this back over. Yeah, we're definitely gonna be cleaning this case. And full disclosure, I do have one pet, Pepsi. She's a cat. You've probably seen her in a few videos. This actually isn't all that bad. So after going unclean for a year, the only real dust with this case sitting on the ground has accumulated around the CPU cooler. That's pretty much it. The underside of the power supply looks fine. The 3080 looks really good. No real dust concerns here. This is isolated. I'm kind of impressed. So we're definitely gonna be cleaning this, and I'm gonna go ahead and start by taking off the fan. It's held in by a couple wireframe brackets. There we go. And yeah, you know it's bad when you can see the fans, like the fan's shadow made out of dust. Oof. And to be honest, because of where this case is positioned, this small amount of dust here is likely to impact temperatures. Maybe a few degrees Celsius, but still it does add up where you've already got a pretty minimalist CPU cooler atop a chip that's pretty power hungry. It's an Intel chip. You really want to make sure that this stuff is cleaned up. If it was a mid-tower, probably wouldn't make much of a difference at all. In fact, this little bit of dust here, you probably wouldn't even notice in terms of temperatures, which is why I don't usually run before and after temp tests in our PCDC videos. Now, I don't just want to take my electric duster and kind of blow this dust out, because at that point we won't be removing the dust, we'll just be moving it somewhere else. It'll get trapped in these cables, down inside the motherboard. We don't want that. So I'm gonna remove the board outright, flip it over. That'll allow us to remove the cooler at that point, and then we can get rid of most of this dust. I'll take it outside and clean it out there. Now you might be wondering, while you see us cleaning this up, how we're able to keep our office clean. And it's largely thanks to Levoit products like their air purifiers and these cordless vacuums. This is the Vortex IQ40, and it has a ton of sucking power. You know it's serious when it literally
pulls up the carpet during use. Two-stage HEPA filters ensure that the recycled air is clean and keeps allergens down for those especially sensitive. This is just some of the dust I pick up from my office after a deep cleaning segment, so you can imagine just how important having an exceptional vacuum is. Be sure to check out the Levoit Vortex IQ lineup by clicking their sponsor link below.
Start first with the 8-pin. Oh my gosh, I can't even. There we go. And then 24-pin, very, very, very narrow clearance. There we go. USB 3.0, front panel, and then we have one more here, HD audio, which I conveniently tucked under this riser cable. Let's see if I can get this out now. I was really proud initially of the way that this build turned out. I thought it looked very clean, especially with the custom cables. We've got this Corsair SF750, which is supplying just enough wattage, I think, for an RTX 3080 and higher end yet older Intel platform. I think we can now remove the motherboard. Oh, got one more USB drive there. Okay, she'll slide on out, and yeah, as I expected, not a lot of dust under the board. Most of it is trapped in the cooler. Just 4 more screws holding this back plate, and I think we'll be good to go. Oh yeah, actually a pretty clever way to install a low profile CPU cooler. So we'll set this aside, and here we are. This is our platform. We can also take this time to repaste our CPU, which may help with CPU temps even more in the long run. There we have it, all nice and shiny again. The CPU in here is an i7-8700. I had to remind myself which generation I had in here. 8700s are among the best performers, obviously not the K SKU, so you can't overclock. But again, I did this intentionally because this being such a small form factor build, very tight spaces, a small cooler, I didn't really see the need to overclock anyway at the risk of even toastier temps. And just a testament to how incredible ITX motherboards are. Look at how densely packed this one is. Now you'd think on the surface, wow, it looks like less material, ITX boards should be cheaper than their ATX counterparts, but that, my friends, is usually not the case for reasons like this here. Just how many SMDs are on the backside of this motherboard. You can see I've actually got my storage drive here as well. It's just all around a pretty impressive feat of technology. I'm gonna go ahead and leave everything else as is. The 8700 is fine. Our 3080 is driving most of what you see on screen, at least in our case, and I'm also gonna leave the low profile DDR4 from XPG. Now we're outside, and here's a reminder of just how dirty this thing is. Again, not the end of the world. I've seen much dirtier in our PCDC playlist, but just to start, you imagine if we had left this for another year, this might require a bit more than what you're about to see. Now it is important when you're using something as powerful as this electric duster here that you don't let the fans that you're cleaning overspin. If they spin too fast, you could trash the bearings. This is also the case if you're using a can of air, and this is also why I do not use an air compressor, an industrial compressor. If you blast too much air at even a single fan blade, it could cause it to snap with that much air pressure that you're using. So you want to be very careful with that. The last thing we're going to do is clean this up just a tad bit more. I can see some dust residue lingering in the fins, so we're going to take this under a soap and water bath. Just a bit of scrub-a-dub-dub. It really helps to have a toothbrush or something similar to get in between these small fins. And yeah, I'm using some of my kids' baby soap. And just like that, I am pretty dang proud of the way this turned out. Looks almost brand new. There's a bit of pitting on the cold plate. This just happens with age, not the end of the world. That's why we use thermal paste. But overall, yeah, cooler looking a lot cleaner now. And this here is what the fan looks like. This is the underside, much cleaner. And all we had to do to clean this was just blast it with our air duster. It's nice to have the nylon bristles, anti-static, so you can scrub really nicely. Sometimes I have to actually clean individual fins. You've seen in the PCDC videos with Q-tips and IPA. In this case, didn't have to do that because they weren't super dirty. And that's why it's important to clean frequently your rig versus waiting for several years. It just means you're gonna have to do even more labor later to get this yeah, back to looking as new as it possibly can. Now we're gonna repaste and reassemble, and this yeah, this order of operations is a bit out of whack because, well, I've got to put thermal paste on the chip first, but then we have to set the cooler, like, I forget which way I had it. How did I have it? Something like that there? I think that looks about right. So we're gonna flip it over, and then I've got to align the holes with the thermal paste on the chip, again, just kind of hanging there. This looks about right. And then we will tighten it all down. And yeah, looking pretty good. We'll get the fan situated. I think I had the cable running, doesn't really matter which way we do this. I'm just trying to think about it from a cable management perspective, something like this here. We'll tuck the excess in and then connect to the board via this header here. And then just a couple of small wireframe brackets. We'll quickly dust the remainder of this build. It's not very dirty. And here we are, all prepped for reassembly. Yeah, it wasn't so bad. Get these cables out of the way. Don't want to snag any of these. And I gotta remember how I routed this HD audio cable. I did it some fancy way before. There's no wasted space. Okay, what's the hold up this time? There we go, I think. Holy cow, it is difficult to wire front I/O in this thing.
One eternity later.
Well, here you have it. She's looking a lot better now. No dust that I can see. Maybe a few scuffs, things we can clean up after the fact. I can probably just wipe it down with I don't know, maybe a damp towel or something. But all in all, very satisfied with the way that this looks. And look, ITX builds like these, especially in cases that are about the size of modern day consoles, can be very challenging. They can also be very rewarding. I mean, look at just how densely packed all of this is. This is also gonna be more powerful than consoles because of this thing right here, this RTX 3080, which would be plenty for a majority of folks out there for years to come. The key takeaway from this should be routine maintenance. It is important. Do not neglect it. I mean, look, I waited a year and I've seen builds become very, very, very like dusty, dirty, grimy after a year. So in that sense, I'm very lucky. But you should make it a habit to at least air dust your system every 3 to 6 months. Otherwise, you might be faced with challenges like the ones we've had to deal with in our PCDC playlist. When it gets really grimy, you have to scrub with water. You have to manually, physically scrub things. You can't just blast air at that point because the dust has solidified and sometimes becomes sticky depending on how humid the environment is, and it just doesn't come up with air alone. So remember to clean your PCs, folks. Now there's only one thing left to do, and that's put this right back where we found it. I know, I'm a bit ashamed. It is technically on the floor and I preach against that, and that's just another thing. It's kind of self-inflicted here. But with routine maintenance, it's okay. Temperatures are okay with this. I've measured long term, and I like the fact that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's not next to me pumping a bunch of hot air into my face or something like that. So let's end the video with that, throwing this thing back where she belongs. Ugh, yep. Always a bit of a struggle taking this thing in and out without breaking anything. Oh, and I gotta wire it up. Oh my gosh. But hey, we are locked and loaded. All right, let's see if I can get a good start. God dang it, already off to a horrible, horrible start. You know what? I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe, like, comment, and stay tuned for the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for cleaning with me.